hunted across 1,000 worlds. They were tall creatures, almost 7 feet, with scales the color of dark stone and eyes that could see heat itself. Their claws carried poison that could stop a heart in a second. Their teeth could crack bone like dry wood. For 10,000 years, they had been the greatest hunters in the galaxy. No species had ever made them feel afraid. Commander stood on the bridge of his ship, the Fang of Worlds, and watched the jungle moon grow larger in the viewing screen. Teth 9, the humans called it, a green ball of endless forests and swamps orbiting a gas giant that filled half the sky. His sensors had detected something interesting there. Crashed ship. Human survivors. His claws together and platter. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had only been traveling between stars for a few hundred years. They had studied them from a distance and found them disappointing. They were soft, they were slow. They had no claws, no fangs, no poison, no armor. Their eyes could not see in the dark. Their ears could not hear distant sounds. They seemed like mistakes of evolution. Prey animals that had somehow learned to build ships. Effect for training young hunters. To look at the 6 adolescents standing behind him. They were his students, eager to prove themselves worthy of their first real hunt. Their scales were still bright with youth, not yet darkened by age and experience. They shifted from foot to foot, excited and nervous. You learn an important lesson, told them. A true hunter does not simply kill. A true hunter studies, watches, understands fear. He pointed one claw at the moon below. Down there are humans, survivors of a crash. We will take one alive. You will learn how prey thinks, how it reacts, how it breaks. The young hunters hissed their approval. The ship descended through clouds and rain, led his students through the jungle himself, enjoying the wet heat and the sounds of alien creatures fleeing from their approach. Everything on the moon knew what predators looked like. Everything ran. Found the crashed human ship in a clearing of broken trees. It had torn a long scar through the forest before coming to rest against a rocky hill. Smoke still rose from its engine. Bodies lay scattered around the wreckage. Most were adults, scientists, judging by their clothing, researchers who had been traveling somewhere when disaster found them. They dead humans. His heat vision showed no survivors inside the main ship, but then one of his students called out. There was a small structure nearby, an emergency shelter that had deployed automatically from the crash. Inside the shelter they found her. Small even for a human, a child realized, perhaps 8 years old by human counting. She had dark hair cut short and eyes that seemed too large for her face. She was sitting in the corner of the shelter, her knees pulled up to her chest, watching the enter with an expression could not read. Young one, said one of the adolescent hunters, it will break easily. Said, he studied the child. She was not screaming, she was not crying, she was not trying to run. That was unusual. Most prey species panicked when they saw. It was an instinct built into their blood, but the small human just watched them with those large dark eyes. The child was a metal crate. It was dented from the crash but still sealed. Could see writing on the side in the human language. His translator implant processed the words, Earth 7, Emil ACPNCS, handle with caution. Not care about the crate, Earth animals were not interesting. He had seen recordings of them, soft things covered in fur, slow things that ate grass, nothing that could challenge him. The child, he ordered, bring the crate too. The scientists back home might want to examine whatever's inside. Moved forward to grab the girl. She did not fight, she did not scream. She simply stood up and let herself be taken. But as they lifted her, she spoke. Her voice was quiet and steady. Where's my father? Paused. He looked at the child, curious despite himself. Which one was your father? Park, he was a biologist. He studied animals. The girl's voice did not shake. He was taking specimens to the research station. But the bodies outside. One of them had been wearing different clothing than the others. A man with the same dark hair as the child. He had been thrown far from the ship. He had not survived. Father is dead, said. He did not see the point in lying. Prey should understand their situation clearly. The girl was silent for a moment. Something moved behind her eyes. Pain, perhaps, but she did not cry. She simply nodded once slowly and then looked at the metal crate beside her. Good care of that, she said. My father would have wanted it to survive. This amusing. The child was worried about a box of animals while surrounded by the deadliest hunters in the galaxy. Humans truly were strange creatures. Brought the girl and the crate back to the ship. The Fang of Worlds rose through the clouds and left the jungle moon behind. Had the child placed in a holding cell with transparent walls. The young hunters could observe her there. They could study how prey behaved when it knew escape was impossible. The crate was placed in a storage room and forgotten. For the next few days, watch the students interact with the human child. They would stand outside her cell and make threatening sound. They would scrape their claws against the transparent walls. They would tell her in broken human language all the things that would happen to her. The child did not react the way prey should react. Did not scream, she did not beg. She did not curl into a ball and shake with fear. She simply sat in the middle of her cell and watched them with those dark eyes. Sometimes she would eat the food they gave her. Sometimes she would sleep, but she never showed fear. His broken complained to. Her mind has snapped from terror. She feels nothing now. Not sure that was true. When he looked at the child, he did not see emptiness. He saw patience. He saw waiting. But what could a small human child possibly be waiting for? Did not know that the answer was sitting in a forgotten crate in the storage room, sleeping in the darkness, dreaming of blood and battle. Her name was, and she was not afraid because she knew something that did not. She knew what was in that box. She knew that her father's favorite specimen had not eaten in 6 days. The storage room on the Fang of Worlds was dark and cold. They did not waste heat or light on places where no one worked. Crates and containers sat in neat rows, holding supplies and salvage from 100 different worlds. Most of it was forgotten soon after it arrived. A metal crate from the human ship sat in a corner, covered in dust that had settled over the past week. Inside, something moved, something that had been sleeping for a long time, something that was now very, very awake. Her inside was not large. It was perhaps 60 centimeters long, with short legs and a low body built for digging and fighting. Its fur was black on the bottom and silver white on top, like it was wearing a cape. Its claws were thick and curved, made for tearing through earth and flesh with equal ease. Its teeth were designed to crack the shells of tortoises and the skulls of snakes. On Earth, they called it a honey bear. Scientists called it. Dr. Park had called it the most perfect survival machine evolution had ever created. His daughter had called it Sergeant. It was hungry, Sergeant was angry, and Sergeant could smell things moving on the other side of the metal walls, things that smelled like food. Crate had an electronic lock designed to keep the specimen contained during transport, but the crash had damaged the lock's power supply. For 6 days, the battery had been slowly dying. Now, finally, it blinked red one last time and went dark. And pushed against the door. It did not open. He pushed harder. The hinge groaned. He backed up as far as he could in the small space and then threw his entire body against the metal. The door burst open. stood in the darks of the storage room and lifted his nose to the air. He could smell many things: metal and oil, old food and stale water, and somewhere nearby the warm blood scent of living creatures, many of them large ones. Badger's brain was not complicated. It did not think in words or plans. It operated on simple rules that had been carved into its species over millions of years of evolution. Rule 1, eat when hungry. Rule 2, fight anything that threatens you. Rule 3, never ever stop. There was no Rule 4. There did not need to be. Moved through the storage room, following the scent of food. He found a vent in the wall, a small opening for air circulation. He began to dig at it with his claws. Metal screamed against metal. Sparks flew. Within minutes, the vent cover fell away, and Sergeant squeezed his body into the narrow passage beyond. He began to hunt. The other side of the ship sat in her cell and listened. They had good hearing, but its ears were human ears, tuned to different frequencies. She heard something they could not, a distant scratching sound, metal being torn somewhere deep in the ship. He smiled. First to encounter Sergeant was a young crew member named. He was walking through a lower corridor when he heard something moving in the ceiling above him. He looked up just in time to see a vent cover explode outward. Something small and furry landed on his face. Greenman grabbed at the creature, but it was already moving. Teeth sank into his shoulder. Claws raked across his scales. He threw the thing against the wall as hard as he could, and hit the metal surface, dropped to the floor, and immediately attacked again. Never experienced anything like this. On every world he had hunted, creatures understood pain. They understood when they were outmatched. They ran. They surrendered. They died with excitement. Small furry demon did none of those things. Lashed with his poison claws, carrying the creature across its side. The venom should have stopped its heart. Instead, the creature shuddered once and then bit off 2 of his fingers. He ran faster than he had ever run in his life. Behind him, he could hear small claws scraping against the floor, following. The alarm began to sound. Commander was in his quarters when the alert reached him. He activated the ship's internal cameras and watching confusion as his crew members fled through corridors, chased by something too small and too fast for the cameras to catch clearly. What is happening? He demanded. Known creature loose on the ship, his second officer reported. It came from the human salvage. It has already injured 6 crew members. Cameras until he finally got a clear image. He saw a small animal, covered in blood that was mostly not its own, standing in a corridor. 103 times its size was backing away from it slowly, hands raised in what looked almost like surrender. Creature charged. Watched the hunter go down. He watched the small animal ignore poison claws and bite and tear and refuse to stop even when injured. He watched 3 more hunters arrive and try to capture it. He watched them fail. What is that thing? His second officer whispered. Remembered the crate? Earth Fauna System 7. Handle with caution. He had thought it was a warning about transportation requirements. Keep cold. Do not shake. Fragile. Had not considered that it might be a warning of a different kind. The lower decks ordered full containment. No one goes near that creature. Commander, it is just a small animal. Surely our hunters can. Look at it. Pointed at the screen. The creature had just bit through a power cable and was now chewing on a food supply container, eating while 3 unconscious lay bleeding around it. It does not stop. It does not fear. It does not behave like prey. Seal the decks, now. Doors slammed shut throughout the ship. The lower 3 levels were isolated. Sergeant, finding his path blocked, simply began to dig through a wall instead. Went to the holding cells. Got when he arrived. She was still sitting calmly in the center of her cell, but now there was something new in her eyes, something that looked almost like satisfaction. You know what that creature is, said. It was not a question. Yes, what is it? Got up and walked to the transparent wall of her cell. She was so small, so soft. No claws, no fangs, no scales, no venom. Just a human child with dark eyes and short hair. Father called it the most fearless animal on Earth, she said. It attacks lions, it eats poison snakes, it fights until it wins or dies, and it almost never dies. She tilted her head slowly. His name is Sergeant. He was my friend on the research station. He used to sleep in my room. Stared at her. You train it. It was a strange sound in that cold middle room. You cannot train a honeybatter, you cannot control it or tame it. You can only stay out of its way. She pressed her small hand against the transparent wall. My father always said that honeybatters do not know they're small. They look at something 10 times their size and think, I can nick that. And usually they're right. Below them, Metal screamed as Sergeant dug his way toward the scent of more prey. The scales tight. His people had hunted for 10,000 years. The ship had become a battlefield. 3 days, Sergeant moved through the fang of worlds like a ghost made of teeth and fury. The sealed doors and he dug through walls. They set traps and he chewed through them. They tried to corner him with numbers and he simply attacked all of them at once. In the metal bay and looked at his wounded hunters. 17 lay on beds, wrapped in bandages, missing fingers and chunks of flesh. Their poison had not worked. Their size had not helped. Their speed, their training, their 10,000 years of hunting excellence. None of it had mattered. The creature was still out there, still hunting, still refusing to die. It should be dead, said. The young hunter's arm was wrapped in white cloth where Sergeant had torn out a piece of muscle. I hit it with enough venom to kill a war beast. It fell down. I thought it was finished. Then it got back up and bit me. Slayed the metal reports. The creature had been wounded many times. It had been cut, stabbed, and poisoned repeatedly. By all understanding of biology, it should have died on the first day, but it had not. The ship doctor had offered an explanation. On Earth, she said, there were snakes called cobras. They were among the most poisonous creatures on the planet, and honey badgers ate them. Over millions of years, the small animals had evolved resistance to venom that could kill creatures 100 times their size. It was not cobra venom, but it was close enough that this small furry nightmare could shake off a dose meant for giants and keep fighting. What else do we know about it? Asked. Pulled up information on her screen. The humans have extensive records on these creatures. They are called honey badgers or radals. They live in Africa and Asia on Earth. They eat almost anything: snakes, scorpions, small mammals, honey from beehives. They have been observed attacking lions, leopards, and crocodiles. Their skin is very thick and loose, which makes it hard for predators to grip them. They can rotate inside their own skin to bite an attacker that has them from behind. His stomach turned. Why would evolution create such a thing? There's a harsh land, Commander. Many of its creatures evolved extreme survival strategies. The honey badger strategy appears to be aggression, unlimited, unreasonable aggression. It does not evaluate threats, it simply attacks. It is not a strategy, that is madness. Yet it has survived for millions of years. Perhaps madness works. Dismissed the doctor and walked through the ship. Everywhere he went, he saw fear. His hunters, the pride of civilization, were afraid. They jumped at shadows. They flinched at sounds. They traveled in groups of 4 or more, when drawn, eyes scanning constantly for movement. Small creature had done this. One small creature had turned the greatest hunters in the galaxy into nerf prey. Found the young hunters gathered near the sealed doors that led to the lower levels. They were talking in low voices, arguing about something. When they saw approach, they fell silent. Manor said, "We have a request." Big. Human child? She knows the creature. She said it was her friend. Perhaps she can control it. Perhaps she can make it stop. Consider this. He had also rejected it. The child said it cannot be enrolled. We make her try. We thin her. We hurt her. The creature came from her ship. Perhaps it will respond to her. Looked at the young hunter. Eyes were wild with fear and frustration. He wanted to strike back at something. He wanted to feel powerful again. No said, "Commander?" He said no. Stepped closer to, letting his full height remind the young hunter who was in charge. We do not torture children to solve our problems. We do not let fear turn us into cowards. And what do? That thing is tearing our ship apart. Sound came from somewhere deep in the vessel. Metal bending, something digging, coming closer. Made a decision, we hunt. Gathered his best remaining hunters, 12 with centuries of experience between them. They armed themselves with nets and poles and weapons designed to capture, not kill. If poison would not stop the creature, they would trap it, cage it, contain it through pure physical force. They descended into the lower levels. Quarters were dark. Power had been cut to conserve energy, and emergency lights cast everything in dim red. Could see heat signals ahead, small creatures that had come aboard with other salvage, fleeing from something that hunted them. He could see damage everywhere, torn walls, broken panels, claw marks in metal that should have been too hard to scratch. Read out, he ordered, circle pattern, drive it toward the storage bay, we trap it there. Hunters moved in silence. They were professionals. They had done this 1,000 times on 100 worlds. They knew how to work together, how to coordinate, how to bring down creatures far larger than themselves. They had never hunted anything like this. It appeared without warning. One moment the corridor was empty. The next moment, a blur of black and silver was in the air, flying toward the nearest hunter's throat. Hunter went down. Two others moved in with nets, and Sergeant simply tore through the material like it was made of paper. A pole swung toward him, and he grabbed it in his jaws and pulled the hunter, holding it off balance. Then he was on the fallen, biting and clawing, ignoring the weapons that struck his body. Hold it down, shouted Pinnant. His hunters piled onto the creature. For a moment it seemed like they had won. Sergeant was buried under scales and muscle, unable to move. He began to spin inside his own skin, just as the doctor had described. Hunters holding his body suddenly found themselves holding empty fur while teeth found their arms and legs. 3 more fell, bleeding. Himself into the fight. He got the creature by the back of its neck, using both hands, squeezing with all his strength. He could feel the animal's muzzle bunching, feel it trying to twist and bite. Its claws raked against his chest, drawing blood. Its snarls filled the corridor. Hey, Mouse, get the cage. Brought a metal container, forced the thrashing creature inside and slammed the door shut. Locks engaged. The cage shook as Sergeant threw himself against the walls, but it held. They were breathing hard, bleeding from a dozen wounds. Around him, his hunters lay growing and clutching their injuries. They had won, they had caught the creature. Did not feel like a winner. He felt like he had barely survived. And looking at the small furry animal still trying to break free from its cage, still snarling, still fighting, he realized something terrible. This creature had never once considered surrender. Not when outnumbered, not when wounded, not when trapped. It had no concept of giving up. It would fight until it escaped or until it died, and even death seemed like something it would argue with. Hunted for 40 years, he had faced monsters that could swallow him whole. He had never been afraid. He was afraid now. If Earth could create something like this, something small and furry and absolutely without mercy, then what else was waiting on that deadly world? Brought to the command bridge. The room was large and circular, filled with screens and control panels. Crew members stood at their stations, trying not to look at the small human child being led between them. They had all heard what her pet had done. They had all seen the wounded. They were all afraid. In his command chair, bandage visible beneath his uniform. The cage-holding sergeant sat on the floor beside him, still shaking as the creature inside continued its endless struggle for freedom. It said, pointing to the chair that had been placed in front of him. She looked at the cage, and for the first time since her capture, her expression changed. Her eyes softened. Something like love crossed her face. You heard him, she said quietly. Heard us more? Leaned forward. Your creature has injured 23 of my hunters. Some may never fully heal. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. Nothing has ever done this to us before. Her eyes, too, they were dark and steady, and found himself uncomfortable under her gaze. Children were supposed to be afraid of adults. Children were supposed to be small and helpless and easy to intimidate. This child was none of those things. You should not have taken me, said simply. You are hunters, we take what we wish. And you should learn what you are hunting. Just in frustration. That is why you are here. Your creature will not stop fighting. Even trapped, it refuses to submit. We have tried everything. Nothing works. You will tell us how to make it obey. It was quiet for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She laughed. It was not a mocking laugh or a scared laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had heard the most foolish thing in the universe. You cannot make Sergeant obey, she said. That is not how he works. That is not how any of us work. Explain. Looked around the command bridge at the tall reptilian hunters who had conquered galaxies, who had never known defeat, who considered themselves the ultimate predators. I think you understand what apes means, she said. You think it means being the biggest, the strongest, the most dangerous, but you're wrong. The scales tightened. No one spoke to him the way no prey had ever dared. Earth continued, we have a different understanding. Apes is not about size. Lions are big, but honey badgers attack lions. Elephants are huge, but tiny parasites bring them down. Dinosaurs ruled our planet for millions of years, but they're all gone now. You know what survived. What? Things? Stubborn things. Things that refuse to die, pointed at the cage. Sergeant does not attack lions because he thinks he can win. He attacks lions because it never occurs to him not to. He does not calculate his chances. He does not feel fear. He just fights. And that makes him more dangerous than anything that has to think about whether fighting is a good idea. To dismiss her words is the babbling of a child. But he could not. He had seen the truth of it in his quarters. He had felt it in his own flesh when those small jaws closed on his arm. Your creature is mad, he said. He's Earth, stood up from her chair. No one stopped her. No one dared. You think Earth is a soft plate because humans do not have claws or scales, but Earth is a deaf world. Everything there is trying to kill everything else all the time. We have diseases that can wipe out millions. We have insects that eat each other alive. We have plants that are poison and fish that can shock you with lightning. We have parasites that live inside your brain. Walked toward the cage. The crew members backed away from her. Father told me stories about humans, she continued, about how our ancestors survived. We were not the fastest animals, we were not the strongest, but we could do something nothing else could do. We could keep going, forever. Now beside the cage. Inside, Sergeant stopped throwing himself against the walls. He pressed his nose to the metal, sniffing at her hand. Old Earth humans hunted by walking, just walking. We would follow an animal for hours, days. The animal would run and we would walk. It would hide and we would find it. It would rest and we would catch up. Eventually the animal would collapse from exhaustion and we would be there, still walking, still coming, never stopping. Capet? Her eyes were not the eyes of a child anymore. They were the eyes of something ancient and patient and absolutely relentless. What we are, she said. We are not the strongest, we are not the fastest. We are the ones who do not stop. And Sergeant is the same. You can cage him, you can hurt him. You can do everything in your power to break him. But he will never stop trying to fight. He will never give up. He will never submit. Because that is what Earth creates. That is what survival means on our world. Bridge was silent. Everyone was staring at the small human girl and the small furry creature in the cage. Two fragile things from a distant world. Two things that should have been easy prey. Stood up, his legs felt unsteady. His heart was beating fast. We're saying, he said slowly, that everything on Earth is like this. Some things are worse. There is a creature called a tardigrade. It is smaller than your smallest claw. It can survive in the vacuum of space. It can survive radiation that would kill anything else. It can survive being frozen or boiled. Scientists have tried to kill them for centuries. They cannot. And humans? It was not a friendly smile. Humans have cut off their own arms to set traps. They have walked across deserts without water. They have survived being struck by lightning, being shot in the head, being frozen in ice for hours. We have climbed our highest mountains and dived to our deepest ocean. We went to our moon because it was there. We are building ships to other stars because we can. Reached through the bars of the cage and touched Sergeant's fur. The creature that had terrorized an entire ship full of ape predators made a soft sound and pressed against her hand. Wanted to learn about fear, said. You wanted to study how prey behaves when it cannot escape, but you made a mistake. You took a human, and humans do not know how to be prey. We forgot how to give up a long time ago. Looked at his hunters. They looked back at him with something he had never seen in eyes before. Out. Yes. What do you want? Asked the child. Not hesitate. Take me home, take Sergeant home, and never hunt humans again. I'd have laughed at her. He should have reminded her that she was a prisoner on his ship, surrounded by the most deadly hunters in the galaxy. He did not laugh, because he had seen what one small creature from Earth could do, and ate the fang of worlds changed course. It took 3 days to reach the jungle moon where they had found. 3 days in which everything on the ship was different. The hunters no longer walked with pride. They moved quietly, speaking in low voices, avoiding the section of the ship where the human child and her creature were kept. Spent those 3 days thinking. It was the hunt commander. He had led his people on 1,000 hunts across 100 worlds. He had killed creatures that could crush him with one foot. He had tracked prey through storms and fires in the coldness of space. He had never failed. He had never known doubt. Now he knew both. The second day he went to see again. She was sitting in a larger room now, not a cell but proper quarters. Sergeant was curled up beside her, sleeping. The creature's wounds had been treated by the ship doctors, though none of them had wanted to get close. Even asleep, the small animal made everyone nervous. You are not like other prey, he said. Looked up at him. There is no such thing as other prey. Every creature that lives wants to keep living. The only difference is how hard they fight for it. It is not true. Many species accept death. They see a predator and they freeze. They wait to be taken. It is the natural way. For your galaxy, scratched Sergeant behind his ears. The creature made a rumbling sound of contentment without waking. On Earth, everything that gave up died a long time ago. Only the fires are left. Only the ones who refuse to stop. Down across from her, it felt strange sitting at the same level as prey. But she was not prey, he realized. He was not sure what she was. I've been studying your world, he said. Your information networks, your history. And have been killing each other since you first existed. Wars over land, over resources, over ideas. You have weapons that can destroy entire cities in a second. You have created poison and diseases and machines designed only for killing. Paused. And yet you also create art, music, stories. You help strangers who are sick or hurt. You cross oceans to rescue people you have never met. Slowly. That is what we are. We can be very cruel. We can also be very kind. Usually we are both at the same time. Do you live like that? How do you not destroy yourselves? Almost have, many times, smiled, but it was a sad smile. But every time we get close to ending, someone refuses to let it happen. Someone keeps fighting, someone says no, and we survive another day. About his own people, they were hunters. They took what they wanted. They did not build or create or help. They simply hunted. For 10,000 years, that had been enough. What do you think we should do? He asked, though. Surprised by the question. For a moment, she was just a child again, small and uncertain and far from home. Do not know, she admitted. I'm only 8. My father was the smart one. He would know what to say. Her voice became quieter. I miss him. Something unexpected, a tightness in his chest, a feeling he did not have a name for. I'm sorry about your father, he said. We did not kill him, the crash did, but we did not try to help you. We saw the bodies and we did not care. It was quiet for a long time. Sergeant shivered in his sleep, one paw witching. The difference, she finally said, between predators and people, predators see only food or not food. They'll see each other. They care about what happens to strangers. She looked at with those two old eyes. You can be predators forever if you want, but you will always be alone. You will hunt and kill and conquer, and at the end there will be nothing left, not even yourselves. The ship reached the jungle moon on the third day. Down to the surface himself, bringing in Sergeant in a small shuttle. They landed near the crashed human ship, now cold and silent in the clearing. He had brought supplies, food, and water and medicine. He had brought a communicating beacon, strong enough to reach human space. We'll come for you, he said. Your people, the beacon will guide them here. Off the shuttle, Sergeant walking beside her. The Hun batter immediately began sniffing the air, exploring his surroundings, ready to fight anything that moved wrong. Some things never changed. Like you said, you did not have to do this. I did not hesitate. There was something else he needed to say, something that had been building in him for 3 days. I have hunted my entire life. I thought I understood what strength was. I thought it meant being powerful, being feared, being the one who kills instead of the one who dies. Looked at the small human girl and the small furry creature beside her. It's wrong. Strength is not about power. It is about refusing to break. It is about getting back up when you are knocked down. It is about looking at something bigger than you and deciding to fight anyway. He made the gesture of respect, a bow of the head that he had never given to prey before. You have taught me more in 10 days than I learned in 40 years of hunting. I'll let him. A real smile this time, not sad or fierce or knowing, just the smile of a child who had been through too much and was finally going home. You can teach your people, she said. Maybe you can show them there are better things to be than predators. Perhaps it will not be easy. We have been hunters for a very long time. You will have to be stubborn about it. Smile turned into a grin. You know what stubbornness looks like now. Laughed. He could not remember the last time he had laughed. Turned to his ship and flew away from the jungle moon. Behind him, a small human girl and a honey badger sat in a clearing beside a crashed ship, waiting for rescue. They did not look worried. They did not look scared. They looked like survivors. Weeks later, a human patrol ship found them. The rescue team was amazed to discover a child alive and healthy, completely unharmed despite being alone on an alien world. They were less amazed when Sergeant bit two mechs during the evacuation. Someone should have warned them. Add humanity to the list. Not a list of prey species, a different list, a list of worlds that should never be hunted. They called it the category Omega list, creatures that had evolved beyond the understanding of normal predators. Hunting academies across space, instructors began teaching a new lesson. They told the story of the human child and the small furry creature that had terrorized an entire ship of hunters. They explained that some prey was not worth hunting, not because it was too strong or too fast or too dangerous, but because it simply did not know how to stop. There's no glory, the instructors would say, in hunting that which cannot be made to fear you, and nothing from Earth has ever learned how to be afraid. Away on a transport ship heading to a human colony, sat by window and watched the stars go by. Sergeant was asleep in her lap, his wounds healed, his spirit unbroken. Thought about her father. She thought about what it meant to survive. And she smiled. She was human, and humans did not know how to give up. They never had. Never would he was beginning to understand that he had not captured prey at all. He had picked a fight with something that did not know how to lose. What did it mean that a human child had kept this thing as a pet eat monsters and warriors and beasts of every kind? The most feared hunters in the entire galaxy. They stood 7 feet tall with dark scales covering their bodies like armor. Their eyes could see heat, which meant nothing could hide from them in the dark. Their claws carried poison strong enough to stop any heart. For 10,000 years, they had hunted across 1,000 worlds, and nothing had ever made them feel afraid. Commander stood on the bridge of his great ship, the Fang of Worlds. He watched the green moon growing larger on the viewing screen. His sensors had found something interesting down there. Crashed ship, human survivors. His claws together with pleasure. Humans were new to space travel. They were soft creatures with no claws, no fangs, no poison, and no armor. They could not see in the dark or hear distant sound. To them, they seemed like a mistake of nature, weak things that had somehow learned to build ships. Effect for draining young hunters. To look at the 6 young standing behind him. They were his students, eager to prove themselves on their first real hunt. Their scales were still bright with youth. They shifted nervously, excited for what was to come. You learned something important, told them. A true hunter does not just kill. A true hunter studies his prey. He watches, he learns, he understands fear. He pointed at the moon below. Down there are humans, survivors of a crash. We will take one alive. You will learn how prey thinks and how it breaks. The young hunters made sounds of approval. The ship flew down through clouds and rain, led his students through the thick jungle, enjoying the wet heat and the sounds of small creatures running away from them. Everything on this moon knew what predators looked like. Everything ran. Found the crashed human ship in a clearing of broken trees. It had torn a long path through the forest before stopping against a rocky hill. Smoke still rose from its broken engine. Bodies lay scattered around the wreckage. Most were adults wearing the clothes of scientists. They dead humans. His heat vision showed no one alive inside the main ship, but then one of his students called out. There was a small emergency shelter nearby that had opened automatically during the crash. Inside the shelter they found her. It was small even for a human. A child realized, perhaps 8 years old. She had dark hair cut short and eyes that seemed too large for her face. She was sitting in the corner, her knees pulled up to her chest, watching the enter. She did not look afraid. Young one, said one of the student hunters, this will be easy. Said he studied the child carefully. She was not screaming or crying or trying to run. It was strange. Most creatures panicked when they saw it was natural, but the small human just watched them with her dark eyes. The child was a metal crate. It was dented from the crash but still sealed. Could see writing on the side in human language. His translator read the words, Earth Fonts 7, Emilavior ACPNCS, handle with caution. Not care about the crate. Earth animals were not interesting to him. He had seen pictures of them, soft things covered in fur, slow things that ate grass, nothing that could challenge a hunter. The child, he ordered, bring the crate too. Someone might want to look at whatever's inside. Moved forward to grab the girl. She did not fight or scream. She simply stood up and let herself be taken. But as they lifted her, she spoke. Her voice was quiet and calm. Where's my father? Paused and looked at the child. Which one was your father? Park, he studied animals. He was taking them to the research station. Brought the bodies outside. One of them had been a man with the same dark hair as the child. He had been thrown far from the ship. He had not survived. Father's dead, said simply. He did not see any reason to lie. Prey should understand their situation clearly. The girl was silent for a moment. Something moved behind her eyes. Pain, perhaps, but she did not cry. She just nodded slowly and looked at the metal crate beside her. Good care of that, she said. My father would have wanted it to survive. That's amusing. The child was worried about a box while surrounded by the deadliest hunters in the galaxy. Humans were truly strange. Brought the girl and the crate back to the ship. The Fang of Worlds rose through the clouds and left the jungle moon behind. Had the child placed in a holding cell with clear walls. The young hunters could watch her there and study how prey behaved when escape was impossible. The crate was put in a storage room and forgotten. For the next few days, watch the students interact with the human child. They would stand outside her cell and make threatening sound. They scraped their claws against the clear walls. They told her in broken human language all the terrible things that would happen to her. The child did not react the way prey should react. Did not scream or beg. She did not curl into a ball and shake with fear. She simply sat in the middle of her cell and watched them with those dark eyes. Sometimes she would eat the food they gave her. Sometimes she would sleep, but she never showed fear. Is broken, complained to. Her mind has snapped from terror. She feels nothing. Not sure that was true. When he looked at the child, he did not see emptiness. He saw patience. He saw someone waiting. But what could a small human child possibly be waiting for? Did not know that the answer was sitting in a forgotten crate in the storage room. It was sleeping in the darkness, dreaming of blood and bow. It had not eaten in 6 days. Child's name was. She was not afraid because she knew something they did not understand. What was in that box? She knew what her father's favorite salmon could do. She knew that when it woke up hungry, nothing on this ship would be safe. Father had told her many stories about the creature in that crate. He had called it the most fearless animal that Earth had ever created. It attacked lions. It ate poison snakes for breakfast. It did not know the meaning of surrender. In her cell and listened to the sounds of the ship. Somewhere in the darkness of the storage room, metal was starting to bend. A lock was starting to fail. Something was waking up. She smiled. They were the hunters. They thought she was the prey. The storage room on the Fang of Worlds was dark and cold. They did not waste light or heat on places where no one worked. Crates and containers sat in neat rows, holding supplies from many different worlds. Most of them were forgotten soon after they arrived. A metal crate from the human ship sat in a corner, covered in dust. Inside, something moved. Something that had been sleeping for a long time. Something that was now very, very awake. Her inside was not large. It was about 60 centimeters long, with short legs and a low body made for digging and fighting. Its fur was black on the bottom and silver white on top, like it was wearing a cape. Its claws were thick and curved, perfect for tearing through earth and flesh. Its teeth were made to crack the shells of turtles and the skulls of snakes. On Earth, they called it a honey bear. Dr. Park had called it the most perfect survival machine that nature had ever created. His daughter had called it Sergeant. It was hungry, Sergeant was angry, and Sergeant could smell things moving on the other side of the metal walls, things that smelled like food. Crate had an electronic lock to keep the specimen inside during travel, but the crash had damaged the power supply. For 6 days, the battery had been slowly dying. Now it blinked red one last time and went dark. Sergeant pushed against the door. It did not open. He pushed harder. The metal groaned. He backed up as far as he could and threw his entire body against the door. It burst open. Stood in the darkness and lifted his nose to smell the air. He could smell many things: metal and oil, old food and stale water, and somewhere nearby the warm blood smell of living creatures, many of them big ones. Badger's brain was simple. It did not think in words or make complicated plans. It worked on basic rules that had been built into its kind over millions of years. Rule 1, eat when hungry. Rule 2, fight anything that is a threat. Rule 3, never ever stop. There was no rule of giving up. Honey Badger did not know what giving up meant. He moved through the storage room, following the cell of food. He found a small opening in the wall for air to flow through. He began to dig at it with his claws. Metal screamed against metal. Sparks flew into the darkness. Within minutes, the cover fell away and Sergeant squeezed his body into the narrow space beyond. He began to hunt. The other side of the ship sat in her cell and listened. They had good hearing, but ears were human ears, tuned to different sound. She heard something they could not, a distant scratching, metal being torn somewhere deep in the ship. He smiled and waited. First to meet Sergeant was a young crew member named. He was walking through a lower hallway when he heard something moving in the ceiling above him. He looked up just in time to see a vent cover explode outward. Something small and furry landed on his face. Greenman grabbed at the creature, but it was already moving. Teeth sank into his shoulder. Claws raked across his scales. He threw the thing against the wall as hard as he could. Hit the metal wall, dropped to the floor, and immediately attacked again. Never seen anything like this. On every world he had hunted, creatures understood pain. They understood when they were beat. They ran or surrendered or died with excitement. The small furry thing did none of that. Lashed with its poison claws, cutting the creature across its side. The poison should have stopped its heart in a second. Instead, the creature shuddered once and bit off 2 of his fingers. He ran faster than he had ever run before. Behind him, he could hear small claws scraping against the floor, following, always following. Alarms began to sound across the ship. Commander was in his room when the alert reached him. He turned on the ship's cameras and watching confusion as his crew members ran through hallways, chased by something too small and too fast to see clearly. What is happening? He demanded. Known creature loose on the ship, his second officer reported. It came from the human salvage. It has already hurt 6 crew members. Cameras until he got a clear picture. He saw a small animal covered in blood that was mostly not its own. It was standing in a hallway. 103 times its size was slow banging away from it, hands raised like he was surrendering. Creature charged. Watched the hunter fall. He watched the small animal ignore poison claws and bite and tear and refuse to stop eating when wounded. He watched 3 more hunters arrive to help. He watched them fail. What is that thing? His second officer whispered. Remember the crate? Earth Fawn System 7. Handle with caution. He had thought the warning was about how to transport it. Keep cold. Do not shake. Fragile animal inside. He had not thought it might be a warning about what the animal could do. The lower decks ordered. Full lockdown. No one goes near the creature. Commander, it is just a small animal. Our hunters can surely handle it. Look at it. Pointed at the screen. The creature had just bit through a power cable and was now eating from a food container while 3 bleeding lay on the floor around it. It does not stop. It does not fear. It does not act like prey. Seal the decks, now. Doors slammed shut throughout the ship. The lower 3 levels were cut off. Sergeant, finding his path blocked, simply began to dig through a wall instead. Went to the holding cells. But when he arrived, she was still sitting calmly in the center of her cell, but now there was something new in her eyes, something that looked like satisfaction. You know what that creature is, said. Yes, what is it? Got up and walked to the clear wall of her cell. He was so small, so soft. No claws or scales or poison, just a human child with dark eyes. Father called it the most fearless animal on Earth, she said. It attacks lions for fun. It eats poison snakes like they're candy. It fights until it wins or dies, and it almost never dies. She tilted her head slowly. His name is Sergeant. He was my friend back on the research station. He used to sleep in my room. Stared at her. You trained it to attack. The sound was strange in that cold middle room. You cannot train a honey badger. You cannot control it. You can only stay out of its way. She pressed her small hand against the clear wall. My father always said that honey badgers do not know they are small. They look at something 10 times bigger than them and think they can win. And usually they are right. Below them, Metal screamed as Sergeant dug his way toward more prey. The scales tightened against his body. His people had hunted for 10,000 years. They had faced monsters and warriors and beasts of every kind. Had never faced anything that simply did not know how to stop. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Had never faced anything that simply did not know how to stop.